Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Amplify Your Business. Today, I'm talking to Alex Dow. He is the co-founder and chief innovation officer over at Mirai Security out in Vancouver, BC. How's it going today, Alex?
Hey, Lance. Thanks for having me. Doing great.
Excellent. It's been a beautiful spring for us here. The coast is always incredible through the summer. So, you guys getting a good one, or is the smoke coming in?
We haven't had as much smoke as the rest of the country has, but it also hasn't rained in Vancouver in about 2 months, which is meaning that July and August are going to be pretty smoky.
Yeah, probably, right? You're going to have the fires whipping up, but the nice dry weather is also really nice reprieve from, like you said, Vancouver. Yeah, excellent. So, welcome to the show. Let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurship to start, and then I want to get into what your business does. So, the question I always ask my guests is, what are three things that every entrepreneur needs to know?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. So I would say like the first one is like plans are useless, but planning is everything. That's a quote from, depending on who you read on the internet, Eisenhower or Churchill. But anything that you plan, particularly in the first couple months or years in the business, will not go to plan. But that exercise of planning and documenting what you're doing and what you're thinking and being agile enough to adjust is critical. The next thing is, if you haven't read the 4 Hour Work Week, definitely do that.
Mm-hmm.
It really gives you a bit of an aha moment of how to really make sure you're doing what you should be doing and outsourcing the rest. Certainly I have strengths and I have weaknesses. Don't spend a lot of time on weaknesses if you can avoid it. And then lastly, make sure you got the risk appetite. I think I always say that ideas are cheap, execution's expensive, and
Yeah.
being, having lots of dreams and ambitions and whatnot, and actually materializing that are two totally separate books as far as I'm concerned. And you got to have a little bit of guts. In fact, one anecdote I'll provide is talking to one of my advisors after like one of our first, big headaches in starting a business. He says, "So would you do it again?" And at the time, I was so burned out. I was like, "I don't know if I would."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he's just like, "Exactly. You needed to be that naive to take on these risks, because if you knew what was going to happen or what could have happened, you probably wouldn't have started."
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that the truth? And it's so interesting. Like with my business, I started it off the corner of my desk as I had another business that I was growing and running. And so this was just a little side project that then turned into a business. And had I looked at it from the perspective of, is there a business here? Do I want to start an actual business? I wouldn't have done it at the time. And I've talked about this before because it was not something that I thought would make sense or that I'd be able to really get rolling and get to cash flow positive position by going, starting it up as a serious business. But because it kind of grew and just, slowly evolved off on the side until it got to a certain size where it's like, okay, wait a minute, there's a business in here. Uh, I then took advantage of that opportunity, but had I set out, I would never have done it. Yeah, it's really funny. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about Mirai Security. What is it that you guys are doing over there? What product service do you offer? Who's your target market? That kind of thing.
So we're a pure play cybersecurity company. We really focus on developing solutions for companies. I would say our target audience is the small, medium enterprise and large enterprise space. Any company that's really digitally enabled, meaning they're using IT on a fairly regular basis. They may be developing software, and all of a sudden, security is now a thing for them. So that can either be driven by compliance or a customer requirement that they
Hmm.
need to step up their game, or they've been impacted by a cyber attack, which has cost them money, impacted the business, etc. Those are our two primary drivers, which brings customers to us, and we really focus on trying to provide like that pragmatic approach to cybersecurity. That
Yeah.
what is just is good enough, or a minimal viable product, and not to set the bar so low, but many companies just have a lot of technology debt that, in order to really step it up to what we would consider industry grade, it is a big jump. So we need to look at it pragmatically to understand, like, we do want to help them with some preventative capabilities, some ability to detect when something bad has happened. But all in all, the biggest bang for buck is the resiliency piece, making sure that if and when they do get breached, and it is probably a when, not if, that they're going to be able to bring that business back online as soon as possible, and resume business, and arguably minimize the impacts to the business as well as their customers.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is one of the things, like you said, it's if not, or sorry, it's when, not if. I think is really the takeaway here nowadays. I was at a security conference. Well, not really a conference. It was more of a gathering of a bunch of different security companies, and that was hosted by one of the primary guys here in Edmonton, and that's what they were talking about, was just like it is imminent. Like the attacks are getting so sophisticated, it's getting really difficult for employees to really navigate through what is actually a legit email request or a link and so on. And so then the ransomware gets in, and everything else, and the extortion happens. And then, speaking of which, I hear some of those from news articles and that, and then also from some of the people that I know. You start asking questions, and then all of a sudden you uncover, yeah, like that business down the street actually did have an attack. What are the most common attacks that are occurring, just so our audience knows, really kind of the trends that are happening right now?
So, there's a myriad of attack patterns that can affect a business, but the two most common ones are going to be something called business email compromise. This is where the attacker has manipulated their way into the email system. Generally, that's going to be Microsoft 365 for most businesses. And the attackers get in, they start reading through email to understand relationships with your vendors and suppliers, and then start sending out emails saying, "Hey, we've changed bank accounts. Can you update your systems to this bank account?" It's obviously a bad guy bank account, and when money is
Yeah.
transacted, it goes into the wrong account. Money's gone.
Yeah.
That is a very common one. We're actually dealing with an incident response as we speak with a
Hmm.
company that caught money leaving their company to the wrong destination.
Oh boy.
The other common one, ransomware is like the umbrella term. Um, Ransomware, when it first hit the scene, was more nuisance. It got on grandma's computer and locked up all her family photos, and they asked for $1,000. But where
Yeah.
it's evolved to is moving well away from attacking individuals, because there's not that much money in it, but really targeting the business. And where it used to be sort of a spray and pray approach, just try to get any system infected and locked up, and then ideally they care about that system and they'll pay to unlock it. Now they're getting into businesses, and they're not doing anything right away. They explore and understand the business, how it works, and when they're ready to attack, the first thing they do is going to delete all the backups. And then they're going to go after typically your ERP, your enterprise resource planning tools, like your accounting software, and lock that up.
Hmm.
And that really puts many businesses at a standstill. One client we had a few years back, uh, it was their inventory system, who owed them money, who they owed money to, payroll was all halted, and it literally stopped the business in its
Hmm.
tracks.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is the thing. Like, some of those attacks are going to cost these businesses millions and millions of dollars in potential lost revenue, broken contracts, the trust factor as well, to the point where like bankruptcy is not unheard of. Like this is putting businesses out of business, right?
Yep. Like we had an incident response about a year or so ago, and the company just wasn't in a position to pay the ransom. And the ransomers who operate like a business in Eastern Europe, typically, they do the research on the business. They try to understand how that business makes money and what they're likely willing to pay. And
Mm,
since they generally will gain access to the accounting software, they've got the
mm,
visibility. However, context is king, and in this case, the company was in the middle of a real estate transaction, had no liquidity, and just could not pay. And they were really concerned that they were going to have to declare bankruptcy because there wasn't an option to recover the business in an obvious fashion. Um,
yeah,
a good news story on that is we were able to find some backups that hadn't been destroyed, and were able to recover the business with only a few months of data loss.
yeah.
But uh, that's what we call a lucky day.
So, what would you say? Yeah, there must be some industry stats on this, but what percentage of small, medium sized businesses are adequately protected from cyber attacks at this point in time, do you feel?
It's probably pretty low. I
Yeah,
know Canadian Center for Cybersecurity does some stats that would be very specific to the Canadian business side of things. There are definitely other industry reports that go out there, but um, arguably even the large enterprises are not immune to these. Suncor was heavily impacted, unable to process credit cards for over a week. As you can
yeah,
imagine, that's a substantial loss of revenue. Um, but going back down to the small medium business, the challenge is that we've been growing IT sort of in a patchwork quilt model of just building on top of old, and that develops what we like to call technology debt. And that technology debt can be anything from just hyper complexity, just the environment is very uh, very nuanced and different. So there you can't do a consistent approach to trying to improve and protect. Um, but also just some of the technologies are old. A file sharing system uh, was was found to be very vulnerable, and some attackers have been just scouring the internet for these servers that are sitting on the internet that are a very popular file sharing tool for small medium business. And as soon
mm,
as they get in, they've got access to all the data. They'll usually download it all, and then they'll encrypt it and force you to pay. So I would say that most organizations are fairly vulnerable, at least in some part. And at the end of the day, like there's the technology piece, but there's a major people piece. Like over 70% of attacks start with targeting your employees and trying to manipulate them into clicking something or allowing the hacker to gain access to the environment. And that's then where the hackers will then pivot and start exploring what else they can get up to.
yeah, and like AI now with all of the abilities to, you know, basically create avatars of like real people. So somebody could actually do a video of me telling my employees to, route money someplace or to uh, give them access to something or whatever the case might be. And they would never know because the technology now is to that point where AI can change their voices. So text to voice, you could have a phone conversation now, and the other person just on the other end texting or typing in what they want that my voice to say, basically. And people are so um, unaware, I think, of what the technology could be doing at this point and how sophisticated it's gotten. I don't know if they're starting to really use that much, but I'd imagine they must, because we're starting to see those tools just really become available to the masses and for free. Talk about the paid ones that these guys might have access to that are just that much better. It would be really hard to decipher. Is that real, Lance, or not?
are you real, Lance, or not?
Yeah.
There's some dark futures ahead. Like AI is really providing some really cool benefits, and we play with it every day and trying different use cases. But certainly, the bad guys and girls are going to do that too.
Yeah.
And to address that problem of the deep fakes and being able to manipulate and replicate voices strictly from sampling of recordings, um, is really about recognizing that in order to really be able to be somewhat resilient against those types of threats is your people.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we really focus on in Mirai is that as much as we all want to think that cybersecurity is a technology problem, and certainly lots of the cybersecurity companies out there are willing to sell you a box of magic beans to help solve that problem. If you don't have the people and process side squared away, it doesn't matter how much technology you buy. In fact, many
Yeah.
companies will be technology rich and people process poor, and then be scratching their head why they still get breached.
Mm.
In the case of the deep fakes and other uses of AI to manipulate people, is training people, enabling them to be your human firewall. I think is the best bang for buck any company, big or small, can do. Um,
Okay.
so when a video or a call comes in from the CEO asking for a really strange ask, you having your employees instantly question that, through training and awareness of how these attacks are working, will trigger them to be like, that was weird, that doesn't smell right. And then, well, what's the next step? Is, well, let's verify, let's call the CEO, let's make an out of band communication. So if it came in over email, then call or text.
Yep.
And that's how you break the cybercrime business. Is, at the end of the day, the cybercrime operates as a business. They have a workflow of how to compromise a target. And if you can break their process by not responding to the email, but rather calling your CEO over phone, you've just broken the process and you've likely killed their attack.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but training and increasing awareness to your people is like that. I think one of the lowest cost and highest value security controls a company can implement.
Yeah. Yeah. What percentage of the businesses that you work with would you say are a result of them having had some sort of security breach issue versus ones who are preemptively trying to prevent it? Is it skewed fairly high in the shit, something just happened to my business, you guys need to help me out here, um, or is that pretty minimal?
No, so like I said, there's actually probably three drivers. It's the compliance piece that they're
Yeah.
regulated. The government or industry body is saying they have to do something, or their customer is saying we love your product, but we don't want to take on additional risk using it. So how do you spell security?
Yep.
The second one is by breach. They thought they were not a target, they were too small, whatever the rationale is, and then they got hit. And once they've recovered, there's like, well, let's not let that happen again. They bring us back in for strategy and sort of a security journey roadmap. And
Yeah.
then the third category is their competitor or their friend got hit and they don't want to be next.
Yeah.
So that it's sort of gradient on reactive versus proactive.
Yeah.
But from a ratio perspective, like subjectively, uh, probably about 50% of the business we have is reactionary because of uh, a pain point that has
Yeah.
triggered the company to actually care.
Yeah, I was anticipating it would be fairly high. Just knowing, business owners, we're pulled in so many different directions. We're just trying to focus on getting our sales and the product out the door, the service out the door, and so on. And so it's one of those things where it's like I know I need to deal with it, but I just can't carve out enough time to really focus on getting that done. And so it's a priority, but it's not one that really surfaces until it's like, oh shit, yeah, something's happened. I would imagine. So yeah,
No
um,
one wants to buy more car insurance until you
yeah,
need it.
Yeah, that's not the truth. Yeah. So I'm curious about your business right now. So let's pivot into talking about your entrepreneurial journey. I mean, and so you've been at this business for about 7 years. You were doing some independent consulting before that, I understand, and then before that, you had a decade or more in the same space as an employee, though. So tell me what motivated you to start a business as opposed to just continuing on in what I would think would be probably a pretty secure and upward moving career trajectory in this space, because it's not a need that was ever diminishing or anything.
Yeah, certainly. And again, I've loved cybersecurity since 1996 when the movie Hackers came out.
Uh,
And that really inspired me to go to school for it, really focus on it, and get my first job in the industry. And I'm really happy I got to skip the whole help desk phase of what a lot of kids have to do to
mm,
cut their teeth.
yeah.
Um, after so I got to move out to Vancouver to build out the security operations center for the Olympics. And then after that, got into consulting. So prior to that, I was really, the geek behind the curtains, making sure that hackers stay out of government environments and banks. After the Olympics, I started being pushed in front of the customer facing in a consulting role,
Mm,
and really enjoyed that. And there's a confluence of me starting to go independent. So I left my full time job to really focus on the consulting side and just doing it on my own. As well, during the night, I started working with a few other geeks, like minded geeks, to organize what became Vancouver's favorite cybersecurity conference, a not for profit, and a monthly pub night. So like we went from zero cybersecurity community to something back in 2019 when the last conference I ran, we had over 600 people,
yeah, that's cool.
and it was really great. But when I was doing the independent consulting, so I'm using my network to find gigs. It's feast or famine. It's
Yeah.
sometimes there wasn't a lot of work, sometimes there's too much work. And when I was trying to find some individuals to work with me with my client, it really was a bit of a struggle. Every independent consultant really loved their own brand, really didn't want to work under other people. There was a bit of ego in there, and cybersecurity has no shortage of ego, unfortunately. Um, so leveraging the community that I was helping build, I thought, like, is there an opportunity to build out a cybersecurity company out of it? And at the time, the players in the cybersecurity world were the big four consultancies, which were generally very expensive and out of reach for many small medium enterprise. And then on the other side were all the cybersecurity companies that really just want to sell you software and hardware, and only if they have to will sell you consulting, because for consulting it's complex, it's nuanced, and that's not really where they make the money. They make their money off of selling the boxes.
Mm,
And that was a bit of a frustration for me because, as I mentioned, and I'll keep on banging this drum, is cybersecurity is a people, process, and technology solution. Throwing a bunch of technology at the wall does not move the needle forward, and arguably can move it backwards in many cases. So, I started, soliciting people within the community. We started a Slack channel for the community, and I was able to start interacting with people on a more regular basis that way. And I think that conversation started around 2015, 2016, and by 2017, I had found a couple other people to try this out, and we went in quite naive, but with an ambition to do what we're doing, but try to scale it out.
mm. And so basically, out of the community that you were fostering because of this desire to connect with other people that are, sharing the same interests as you, then emerged this opportunity to find like-minded individuals who create this startup then.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
in 2013, it was, I just want to talk to like-minded people, rub elbows, geek out over a beer or two.
Yeah.
And what it evolved was that, hey, there's actually quite a few independent consultants out there, and some of them are going to be lone wolves and want to be that way, but some of them did recognize some of the frustrations I had, particularly QuickBooks, but others as well. And was there a way to build out a company that could sort of consolidate and centralize the administrative side and really build a foundation? And arguably, we call ourselves a collective because we attract the people that have done independent consulting and just know that what, it isn't all it's cracked up to be, and they want to be on the team. They don't want to be the biggest fish in a little pond anymore. They really want to be part of something larger,
Yeah.
and that's really what we started with in 2017 and really materialized in 2020.
Now, what I'm curious about too is like as our business has grown fairly rapidly the last few years, recruitment has been one of our biggest challenges. I would imagine it must be a lot easier for you folks to be able to recruit because you've built yourselves kind of in the middle of this community of potential employees, right? So I don't know if that was strategically something that you were looking at, but man, you must leverage the heck out of that, eh?
Yes and no. Like, so, when you start off with this crazy idea, there's a lot of naysayers that are going to be like, that'll never work. And I'm not willing to take that risk of joining such a small company. That was definitely a challenge we had in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, However, as we started building more reputation on not only doing good work with our clients, but also really fostering a really solid culture of innovation and growth mindset with our people, that there started to be more attraction. Also, working with the universities, we also were able to start building a fervor with a lot of the students to build out the team. However, in 2020, with the pandemic kicking off and all that, there became a seller's market in cybersecurity skill set. Not that it wasn't
Yeah.
ever a buyer's market in cybersecurity; it's always been fairly in demand. But
Yeah.
competing against the Microsofts, the Amazons, and the Apples that all have massive campuses in Vancouver, we started really struggling to attract and compete salary wise with the U.S. companies and attract people. So we ended up realizing that we had to go national, and we over the course of 3 years have been hiring people from pretty much coast to coast. We had people on both sides of the country and quite a few in the middle, to create this. To meet the demand of our clients, but also have like a very national presence.
Yeah. Yeah. Our business is the same way, but we actually went even beyond that. We went international. And half of our team now is working from other countries and like multiple other countries. I think we represent 9 different countries now. And so is there a reason why you constrained yourself to just nation like Canada as opposed to North America or beyond that?
With security,
Yeah.
there is definitely that driver for trust. There's a big piece of
Yeah.
trust, and while I know lots of cybersecurity companies do outsource to Eastern Europe and India, I felt like that was probably a bit of an administrative burden for us, and
Mm.
it had bad optics to our clients. Like clients
Yep.
want, particularly, a lot of what we do is uncovering things that are a bit embarrassing and a bit sensitive.
Yeah.
So having the proverbial throat to choke was important for a lot of our clients, and some of our clients require us to go through security clearances and background checks. So
Yep.
the
It's a lot easier.
the global local workforce of Canadians made a lot of sense for us. It's not to say that we're opposed, and we did have a few Americans on the team as well. But the complications, particularly in such a sensitive industry, were a bit too high. And given that we're a small local team that became national and remote quite quickly, um, we didn't have the processes to really manage people on the other side of the world in like at time zones 6 to 12 hours away.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It definitely creates a lot of complexity in that. And I can totally see how branding yourselves as, Canadian only and having that ability to get those security clearances and checks and that would just be so much easier with that more national workforce. Yeah. Um, I'm also curious. Okay, so you guys have grown a fair bit in the 7 years. You ebb and flow with what the project load is like. From I think you were saying like 35 up to 50 plus people on the team, and continuing to grow. Like this is an industry that I don't think is at risk of slowing down. If anything, it's just the need is getting bigger and bigger. So the obstacles to, I guess, really achieving that growth, whatever that growth goal maybe is over the next, say, 3 years, what is going to challenge you to achieve that? And then how are you going to overcome that in your mind?
Well, retrospectively, like our we had exponential growth during the pandemic, um, and like with all engineering firms, we'll have ebbs and flows of big contracts. We hire up, we deliver that contract, and then we contract down.
Yeah.
So one of the things we really learned the hard way was addressing that ebb and flow was that when we went from a very small boutique company to arguably the largest cybersecurity team in Western Canada, um, the lack of processes, particularly for a fully remote company, we started to feel a lot of those growing pains. It drove us to hire an HR lead that changed the game, both on in terms of like really having consistency on how we hire, but also really trying to instill a culture. Because again, going from 10 local people to 58 in a very small period of time, there was a lot of growing pains.
Yeah.
What I am really proud is that we have really come up to that challenge in terms of putting those processes in, putting those systems in, that somebody on the other side of the country doesn't feel all that disconnected from various team members in Quebec and Ontario, Alberta, and British Columbia. But yeah, the first round of that was a lot of challenges, and the pandemic did us no favors with forcing that remoteness because uh, everyone breaks up their day into 30-minute increments, and the monotony of that really wasn't a positive experience for our company as well as others. So really building that culture and putting in tools to help work around the constraints of being remote and forced remote due to the pandemic, but also national, that we have up to a 4 hour time difference between team members.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is one of the things that is talked about a fair bit by a lot of our guests is around processes, systems. You can't do growth without it. You can get to a certain stage, but it's really quite chaotic. And until you really think about that aspect of it, and then put in place the HR controls and making sure that you're recruiting the right kind of people and maintaining that culture, especially remotely, is just so important in terms of achieving any kind of continued growth. This is a book that we put together. Not a massive book or anything, but it's a interesting read. The Secret Sauce of Building a Successful Business, and that's from interviews from people. Our first 200 guests on the show, and we have two chapters. One dedicated to HR, and another one that's dedicated to the operation side of it and the systems and that. And a lot of the people echo exactly what you're saying, or you're echoing what's in that book. Now, that's something that you were sharing with me that you're going right into an all hands meeting right after this, and you're going to be talking about values in that one, and and that's something that I'm curious as a remote workforce scattered across the country. You have new people coming in who have never had that when you guys had started the business, the nucleus. The same with ours, where there was the face to face and everything else, and then we went remote after that. So that core culture that you were trying to foster at the time, how do you guys maintain that? What's the secret there?
Yeah. So again, we are still a remote company with team members across Canada. So first and foremost, the all hands meetings are important to keep everyone abreast of all the things going on. Everyone sort of works within their teams or pods and is very hyper aware of what they're doing, but not necessarily what the pod next to them are doing. So
Yeah.
the all hands meeting is a great tool for that. we kick it off with like my value shares as a co-founder of the company, and the gatherer of people to build what we are today. Um, we I had some internal values of what I wanted and didn't want our company to act like. But back in 2001, we crowdsourced across the team of what are 5 values that we can beat our drum to. So I have the slide up on my screen because I'm updating it right after this call. But our values are integrity, care, diversity, growth mindset, and innovation.
Hmm.
And each month I will talk about one of those values and how we're actually applying it in the company. So to really encourage and inspire the team to align to those. We found that at the end of the day, when you define values, it allows it to be the North Star for everyone, that if a decision is being made, and care is a really important one, particularly when the highs and lows of business, making sure that our decisions are reflective of our values every time.
Yeah.
So when somebody's sick or leaves the company, like, how do we handle those situations is it separates us from different companies.
Yeah.
We also really encourage local teams to get together. So we use Regis and WeWork a lot to enable localized teams to see each other. And like we do have a good center of excellence in Vancouver, so we do get to have some more FaceTime in Vancouver. But yeah, like myself and my other partners do try to travel across the country a few times a year to see our teams and have that FaceTime, and really facilitate a little bit of team building, and at the end of the day, just geeking out.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, totally. It's creating those opportunities for the collisions to occur, right? The collisions of people outside of just the the work, the work related meetings and actions and tasks and assignments of all that, and the reviews of that and so on, right? It's more the social collisions that need to occur, I think, to really foster it. And that's what we try to do too. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thanks a lot. I really appreciate you sharing everything here with us today, Alex. It's just been a pleasure meeting you and learning from a high growth focused business. Some of the things that you guys have gone through, but then also learning as well some of the tips there in terms of the things to really be focused on from a security standpoint. I mean, we just barely brushed the surface, obviously, of where the risks lie. If somebody wanted to reach out to you and learn a little bit more and maybe ask for some additional advice in that regard, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Great. I'm on LinkedIn. We've got a website that has a contact us form. Definitely encourage if somebody wants to have a chat about what their business is and where it can be in terms of a risk management perspective. Always happy to have those calls because yes, we're in the business of consulting on this, but um, our small medium businesses is the economy of Canada.
Yep.
And when we have such brazen attacks that impact and can put businesses out of business, that's not good for our country. So very happy to have those conversations. We do a lot of webinars, and I love sharing knowledge and really trying to move the needle forward. There's a lot of businesses that can't afford consulting, and they end up just buying a bunch of technologies and tools. I try to help coach them in those balances, just to make sure that they are actually moving the needle forward and not just buying a bunch of tools that sit on the shelf. So,
Yeah.
by all means, connecting with me on LinkedIn or reaching out to the company over the website.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for that. And for those of you who enjoyed this episode, want to listen to some other entrepreneur journeys and listen to some experts, head over to amplifyyourbusiness.ca. That's where you're going to find our archives. on the video side of things. And then obviously, if you're listening and you prefer the podcast only version, we're available on any of your major podcasting platforms. And so just search Amplify Your Business there. And over at that same link, amplifyyourbusiness.ca, you're going to be able to find a download button for the guide to the secret sauce of building a successful business. So definitely check that out as well. And until next time, everybody have a prosperous day. And once again, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Alex.
Thank you, Lance. Have a great day.